Hey folks, Palmer Tom's DawgsHQ doing a little bit of a crossover edition, Georgia Tennessee preview with Eric Kane of VolQuest. Eric, appreciate you taking the time today. And I know we were chatting. This is a game that it means a lot to a lot of people. There's a lot of crossover between Georgia and Tennessee and the shared border. There's Georgia fans in Tennessee. There's Tennessee fans in Georgia, and always a fun one. And it's going to be really weird. I had this kind of a conversation earlier this season with the guys over at Gamecock Central when Georgia was playing South Carolina, but it applies here. It's going to be really weird that these two teams are not playing on an annual basis. In all likelihood, move into a divisionless format.
Yeah, times are changing, man. And from a Tennessee perspective, it's the big three every year. It's Alabama, it's Florida, it's Georgia, and I'm pretty safe in saying that I believe Tennessee and Alabama are going to be playing quite frequently. I know you go to that 7-1 model, you're probably protected with Vanderbilt, but gosh, the third Saturday in October has got to find a way to play. We'll see, but. Florida and Georgia are huge games on the schedule every single year for a Tennessee fan. So this game means a lot to a lot of people. It's been one-sided here of late. There's been some great finishes in this game, obviously, over the years. And you're right, man. That border down there in Chattanooga, there's a lot of crossover down there for sure. So looking forward to Saturday.
Yeah, as we get into Saturday, just what are your initial thoughts? We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon. Couple days of hearing from folks up in Knoxville, and we're all but done with media down here in Athens. I know Heupel speaks on Thursday as well. Just what do you feel like the vibe going into this game is, especially with it being played at Neyland Stadium? That's always a factor. And the kind of a balancing factor a little bit, but with Tennessee coming off of that loss last weekend to Missouri, Georgia coming in red hot with a 52-17 win over a top 10 Ole Miss team. Just what's the vibe like in atmosphere in Knoxville?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Tennessee fan base, obviously, the beginning of the week is frustration, disappointment, because of what happened in Missouri. No way around it. I mean, Tennessee went on the road and literally didn't get off the bus. I mean, it was offensively, defensively. Tennessee's star player, and this is not even a joke, he was really actually good in this game, is the punter, Jackson Ross, but you never want your punter to be your star player. And so I think early in the week there was frustration, disappointment, and not really looking forward to this game because, I mean, everybody knows Georgia's good. Georgia's done nothing but get better as the year's gone on. Quarterback Carson Beck's gotten better. Brock Bowers, cheat code, don't know how he's back, but he's back catching a touchdown after tightrope surgery. I think everybody knows how good Georgia is, and it's continued to get better. And so, but I think as the week's gone on, man, I mean, people realize, all right, hey, you get 12 Saturdays guaranteed. You got 2 left. You got 1 against Georgia, top ranked team in the country, coming to Neyland Stadium where you haven't lost in 14 tries. You're really, really good at home. Playing in front of that home crowd, and I think as the week's gone on, the excitement's kind of started to build a little bit more. But at the beginning of the week, there was a lot of disappointment just coming off what happened last weekend. But just like those guys in the locker room, they've been talking about it at media availabilities this week. But if you can't get up for this game, there's not a game you're going to get up for. I mean, it's Tennessee, Georgia. It's 2 top 25 teams, number 1 team in the country. And still a lot to play for if you're Tennessee. Sure, the divisional title's off the line, but you want to finish off this season strong. So I think there's excitement as the week's gone on.
And that's good to hear, honestly, because that's what you want a game like this to be about. Kirby was asked, about it and said, hey, y'all are playing a Tennessee team that didn't play its best ball last week. How does that impact you and, having to get your team ready to go play a team that can play better than what it's playing? And, he admitted that Tuesday's practice in Athens was not their best. But that this is always, the outside factors here shouldn't really play a part, because this is always a matchup of two teams that, like we said, share a border, recruit a lot of the same guys. There's guys on Tennessee's roster that were recruited by Georgia, and Georgia won it a lot. There's vice versa. And so, this is a game that always means a lot. It's 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, going to be the 3:30 CBS game. And if it's not that, then it's going to be the, a 7 o'clock ESPN kick. And, it's a premier matchup. It's a premier game in this league, between two powerhouse programs. And so that is, from somebody that grew up in Tennessee and knows what Neyland Stadium can be like. I remember, sitting next to a coworker now, Jake Rowe, a couple of years ago when, Tennessee and Georgia were facing off there. Can't remember if it was 21 or 19, but, Tennessee was in that game. And it was, he said, look, this place is about to explode if Tennessee can get one more play in its direction, and just wasn't able to do that. Georgia kind of pulled away in both those games. And so, turning our attention to this one, the 2023 matchup, let's start with Tennessee and when they've got the ball, on offense led by Joe Milton. Just what have your impressions been of him in his first year as a starter? Taking over the reins of an offense, he took over at the end of last year, and I think that set an expectation, but taking over and a changed offense in a way, because you lose a lot of, really dynamic playmakers, including one at the quarterback position last year.
Well, I think whenever you're talking about Joe Milton, first and foremost, it's important to remember, or it's important to realize, Joe Milton, it was never going to be Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker was an elite quarterback. Hendon Hooker should have been in New York for a Heisman finalist. The fact that he was not a Heisman finalist was quite frankly, just horrible last year. But, Joe Milton's not that. Joe Milton, for much of his career at Tennessee and for much of this year, has been an average quarterback. He's done some things at a high level. But he has gotten better as the years gone on. He is playing much better football now than he was in the month of September. Now, I think at Missouri he didn't have his best day. Obviously, Tennessee didn't have his best day. But overall, where he's playing now is much better than where he was. He's got a lively arm. We know that. Tennessee has really lacked the explosive plays down the field this season, and I think it's a kind of a combination of a little bit of everything. You mentioned, no Jalen Hyatt, who won the Blitnikoff last year, no Cedric Tillman, who was a third-round pick, no Hendon Hooker, obviously, who was really good. You have an offensive tackle in Darnell Wright that went top 10 overall to the Chicago Bears. You had Jerome Carvin, who's in the NFL right now, playing at another guard. You lost a lot of talent on that offense, and so I think one of the biggest differences is the lack of explosive plays, and a lot of people would just assume that you point to the quarterback, and Joe Milton's got a hand in that, but the pass operation, wide receivers and everything was just not good early in the year, and it's gotten better. Now, Tennessee's dealt with a ton of injuries. Brew McCoy's out for the year. Now Dante Thornton's going to miss this game. He's out. He was really starting to come around. It's been about kind of filling in some gaps and all that, but Joe's gotten better about throwing over the middle of the field, hitting his slants. He's been much more accurate. He's been efficient. His running has really picked up, and they've called design runs for him, and I think that's helped him in the passing game as well. So when Joe gets some confidence, he's a pretty good quarterback. A lot of times we make the joke that, early on in a football game, they need to call a design run for him so he can get hit and kind of start feeling himself a little bit and then go out there and play, and that's what Tennessee kind of does. So he's a much better player now than what he was at the beginning of the season, but still, he makes some mistakes, and he's not Hendon Hooker. And I think over the offseason, a lot of college football fans, not just Tennessee fans, college football fans just assumed it was going to be no drop-off whatsoever, but that's just not fact of the matter. It's just, Joe Milton's a different type of quarterback.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned the needing to get hit, because that was something we always heard from Stetson Bennett. Just that he didn't feel like he was playing football until the pads were popping and that he got hit, and it was like, okay, let's tighten up, let's go play, and that really focuses things. So funny to hear that from another side of things, and you mentioned it with the injuries at receiver. Obviously that impacts an offense when you've got playmakers that aren't going to be able to make plays like Brew McCoy and Dante Thornton. Certainly changes it. But what have you seen from the guys around him, around Milton? Squirrel White, Ramel Keaton, and then obviously a run game that it led by Jalen Wright that, Kirby always says, if you think Tennessee is a pass first team, you are wrong.
Yeah, I mean, Kirby Smart shows you why he's a good coach, because there's so many people that, even cover this sport that's just like, oh, Tennessee throwing an air raid, yada, yada. Like, sure, Tennessee likes to throw it down the field. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, everything Tennessee does is built off the run game. Josh Heupel said that in his opening press conference. Josh Heupel said that many many times since. For them to be who they want to be, they got to run the football, and sure, the focal point really this season's been the run game. But Tennessee's averaged 200 yards on the ground a game every year that Josh Heupel's been here. So this isn't new, but it's really good. I mean, up until last week, leading the SEC in rushing. On the other side, you were leading the SEC in rush defense. Of course, that's changed a little bit since Missouri, but Jalen Wright has kind of came unglued. He's gone to another level. He was more of a scat back early in his career, and he's put on some good weight. Hadn't lost the speed. His vision's really good. His patience is really good. He's kind of a force to be reckoned with, but it's not just Jalen Wright. I think a big reason why Tennessee's run game is so well, and why they were averaging about 240 yards prior to last week, is because they play Jalen Wright. They play Jabari Small, who's been here a while. They play Dylan Sampson, who's kind of a home run hitter. So, where you would like to see Jalen Wright get 25 carries a game, he's getting 12, 13, 14. Jabari Small is getting 8, 9. Dylan Sampson's getting 8, 9 touches, and they do a good job of keeping all those guys fresh, and that's why it's been so effective. Love the run game. A key this week, though, is can Tennessee run on Georgia? In 2 years of Josh Heupel, Tennessee's not been able to run the football against Georgia. And for Tennessee to have a chance later in this football game and to play with Georgia, Tennessee needs to run the football. Some of those other playmakers, wide receivers, Squirrel White is a guy you really got to watch out for. He's been a guy they can throw it to down the field a little bit, but they like to throw it to him underneath. He's a playmaker. Ramel Keaton's kind of had a down year a little bit. I think confidence has been an issue with him, but we know what he can do and what he's brought to this team the last couple of years. And then from there, you're kind of filling in the gaps. Again, I mentioned the injuries. Dante Thornton won't play in this game. Brew McCoy won't play in this game. Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, two redshirt freshmen who've done a nice job coming in. But again, you're talking about this group of guys, and you're not talking about the McCoys, the Thorntons, the way he was playing, and of course the Hyatts and the Tillmans. It's very much a different looking offense at the skill position. But back to the run game, you see it right there. Jalen Wright has got to have a good game. Tennessee's got to run the football for this to be a competitive football game.
Yeah, Jalen Wright, 117 attempts on the ground this year, 11.7 a game. But you're right with Sampson as well, leading the team in touchdowns with 7 there. As I talk about the Georgia defense, I'm really interested to see how they handle that run, because that hasn't been their strength this year. If you're looking at this defense, and pointing to the front half or the back half, you like the back half a lot better. You like a secondary that features returning starter and All-American caliber player in Malachi Starks at safety, 2-time, college football playoff defensive MVP, Javon Bullard, that made the move from star to safety. Kamari Lassiter is a potential first-round pick. You've got a guy at star in Tyke Smith that's super experienced and playing the best football of his career this year. So you feel really good about that secondary. And I think that matching up against an offense that, like you said, is banged up, especially at that receiver position, I like the way that Georgia matches up there, especially more than I would if you were throwing in Thornton and McCoy as well. Although Georgia's handled a couple of really strong, talented receiver groups the last couple of weeks with Missouri and Ole Miss pretty well. But the run defense has been a bit of a concern for the Bulldogs, and at times it's been their Achilles heel. I mean, you look at that Auburn game, and the Tigers ran for over 200 yards on them. First time that's happened since 2018. Missouri and Cody Schrader, a guy that both of these fan bases are plenty familiar with. He had a big game against Georgia before having an even bigger one against Tennessee. So, last week, Quinshon Judkins got going, and Ole Miss was able to move the ball pretty well on the ground early before they got down and realized we're not going to be able to stop this Georgia offense, and we're going to have to make plays through the air. We can't, try to shorten this game on the ground. So, I am really interested to see, because the strength has been in the back end. It's not up front. They don't have a disruptive defensive lineman like they have the last couple of years, with 4 guys going in the first round over the last 2 NFL drafts. You've had 2 outside linebackers taken, 3 inside linebackers taken in that same span. And now you're looking at, as I mentioned, the inside linebackers, you're looking at a group that's counting on 2 true freshmen there. Obviously you've got, number 2 right here, Smile Munden. He's this team's leading tackler, and was last year, but the leader of that defense, the quarterback of that defense, Jamon Dumas-Johnson is going to be out this Saturday. So, in steps CJ Allen. He wins SEC Freshman of the Week, leads the team in tackles against Ole Miss. But you're still counting on a freshman, and you don't know what you're going to get week to week with a young guy like that. So very interested to see. And if I'm Tennessee, you mentioned it with Milton and, getting him going and getting him comfortable with his legs early. I would be doing that too, because that's the way that teams have beaten Georgia. Brady Cook ran the ball well. Peyton Thorne of Auburn ran the ball well. Teams that Jackson Dart had some runs last week. Teams that have those mobile quarterbacks that can, really put pressure on you. And I think it's why a lot of people are already circling that matchup with Alabama and Jalen Milroe, and that being a big concern. Teams that have that kind of a quarterback that can make plays with their legs, it doesn't have to be Johnny Manziel back there. It can be a designed run, a QB power type deal. It doesn't have to be the, scramble drill. So if I'm Tennessee, I'm really, really relying on the run and getting the quarterback involved early.
Yeah, and I think that's what Tennessee needs to do. Now, Hendon Hooker was so good about, when the play collapses or when there's nobody downfield, he'll just tuck and run. And big time runs in games against LSU, Alabama, games that mattered last season. I don't think Joe Milton, for the most part, wants to run. He wants to sit back there and sling it all over the place, and that's fair. He has done a better job as the years gone on, kind of recognizing situational awareness, 3rd and 6. And he's sitting back there and you got a path, take it. Go move the chains. And he's done that a little bit better, whereas earlier in the year he would be hesitant. And again, they have called design runs to get him going. He'll do the zone read, and I don't know this for sure, but I believe they call zone read keep a couple of times, say, hey, just go. They'll run the QB sweep, QB power, and I think that's been good for him. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. For Tennessee to have success in this football game, for this game to come down to second half, fourth quarter football game, Tennessee's got to run the football and just kind of build off that. And I think a big part of that will be the quarterback run game. And obviously this goes without saying. Joe Milton's got to play his best game of the season for sure.
As we flip things over to the Georgia offense, looking again, it starts with the quarterback position, really as football does. And Carson Beck and the way that he's been able to grow and develop over the course of his first year as a starter, it's been really, fun to watch, because you're watching a kid that's getting to play football for the first time since really his senior year of high school, and he's enjoyed it. It's been, just hearing him talk about it has been pleasant, because, we heard from both the quarterbacks during the spring and, the guys that competed for that starting spot. And, they were both guys that you really want to root for. Guys that have waited their turn, guys that know how to handle things. And I think Milton kind of falls into that same category here. A guy that came in as a starter and then, was beaten out, and then now he's back in there again. So, as you look at the quarterbacks with Beck, obviously he's got a ton of weapons. And his biggest weapon was back this past Saturday. Brock Bowers making his return after just 26 days post tightrope surgery. Just freakish things that guy does. And we talked to him and last night, and he's just, I put it out on Twitter, but built different is a cliche, but it's the only fair way to describe Brock Bowers, because just mentally and physically, this guy is different. To take the approach that he did to that surgery. And, he was like, hey guys, I kind of liked the rehab process. It gave me something to work for, something to strive for and see like, okay, I hit this benchmark in 7 days. Let's see if I can hit this next one in 6 or 5 or whatever. It was just a constant battle. I saw somebody write it this week, but he wasn't playing games, but he was playing games with his rehab. And so, as you look at this Georgia offense, to me, they are rounding into form and they are the best version of themselves last week. And I don't know that it's unrealistic to expect that going forward. I mean, they're averaging over 40 points a game. They are, one of the top scoring and total offenses in the country, not just in the SEC, but in the country. They are number 5 and 6 there with scoring and total offense. And so, I think that as I look at this matchup, for Georgia, I think it's fairly similar to the one that they had against Missouri and Ole Miss, and where you're going up against an offensive-minded coach and a team that probably prefers to have the ball, fans that prefer to watch the offense as opposed to the defense. So I think that with Lab McConkey back and Ra Thomas and Dominic Lovett, the 2 transfers rounding into form. Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint is another receiver that they've relied on. Amarius Mims getting back out there, potential first-round pick on the offensive line. This Georgia offense is really rounding into its best version of itself. And, I'm curious to see how Tennessee will try to defend Brock Bowers and all the different weapons that Georgia has. Not to mention, Bulldogs ran for over 300 yards on the ground. And how could I forget, the senior day showing that Kendall Milton and Dejan Edwards both had with 2 touchdowns apiece.
Yeah, I mean, if you're Tennessee, you hope that you're just versatile. I guess, Tennessee's defense has taken, again, not last Saturday withstanding because that was horrible on all accounts, but Tennessee's defense continues to take steps in the right direction every year under Josh Heupel. And again, what he inherited was just, it was one of the worst situations in college football. 30+ players at the portal, NCAA cloud investigation. Nobody wants to come. You know what I'm saying? And it just was not a good situation. You had, on defense at linebacker, you played 3 linebackers. Literally, you played 3 linebackers in 2021. That's unheard of. And really, and you're still seeing some of the unfortunate, situations linger on in the 2023. You're not deep at wide receiver. You're not deep at linebacker, and it's helped. Recruiting's gotten better, of course, and the transfer portal helps, and Tennessee's done well in the transfer portal. But point is, the defense has continued to get better and better. Tennessee's defense goes off its front. If the front's going, Tennessee's defense is going to have a heyday. The secondary is so much better when the defense is getting home up front, rushing with 4. And Tennessee will play 10 to 12 guys. And that man right there, you're seeing on the screen, James Pierce, breakout sophomore season.
A guy Georgia really wanted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a guy that is up there in terms of sacks in the Southeastern Conference. And so when they're getting home, you're making the back end much better. So Tennessee will play 10 to 12 guys up front. Tyler Barron's another one on the other side of James Pierce that is having a really good season. The interior, Bryson Easton, Amari Thomas, Omar Norman Lott, Croc Garland's coming around here lately. Again, these guys are doing a great job on the defensive front. So for Tim Banks, the coordinator, they have so much faith in that front that he'll sit back and say, you're not going to beat me over the top. Throw all that underneath stuff. Let's rally and go make the tackle, and let's rely on those front 4 guys to get to the quarterback. It's not worked at points in times this season. Didn't work at Florida. Did not work last week against Missouri. Didn't work against Kentucky and Devin Leary. And when you're not getting home and you're not bringing pressure from the second and third layer, man, you're exposing that secondary it's gotten better, but it's not great to begin with. And you're missing your best cover corner in Kamal Hadden, who was playing as good as anybody in the country. So Tennessee, long way to say, I hope Tennessee's multiple. I hope Tim Banks shows willingness to not be married to one specific thing, because I think with an offense that's rounding into form, getting healthier at running back, getting healthier at tight end, who, first round pick, offensive line that's allowed 9 sacks on the season and getting healthy with Amarius Mims, quarterback Carson Beck, who's getting better. Again, you said it a moment ago, Georgia offensively is playing its best football right now. And so when you're going up against that, I just hope you keep changing things up. And if you get beat, you get beat. I mean, but send the kitchen sink at him a little bit and allow Aaron Beasley to blitz from the second layer. Allow Tamari McDonald or Jordan Thomas to blitz from the third level. That's how I think Tennessee should approach this type of game. But you mentioned the run game as well. Tennessee's been really good at defending the run all year long. It was not against Cody Schrader, to say the least. It was really, really bad. It starts by trying to defend that run and then building off that defensively, just like it is offensively. So I'm intrigued to see how Tennessee defends Georgia or lines up and the strategies it chooses, because it's obviously going to be a tall task.
Maybe Cody Schrader's just a really good running back. Maybe everyone should just give him a little bit of respect, because we're talking about, two really good run defenses. They got shredded by him. Shredded by Schrader. That should be a thing. So, hey, Eric, really appreciate you taking the time. I know that I've taken more than I asked for. And so, tell the folks over at DawgsHQ how they can find y'all's work over on VolQuest.
Yep, I like to say be the smartest guy at the tailgate, whether you're a Vols fan, whether you're a Georgia fan. The majority of these people listening will be a Georgia fan since we're on your site. I might put it on our side over at VolQuest too. But anyway, VolQuest.com. Learn all about Tennessee. Learn about these matchups. Learn about both these teams. Every angle being previewed before Tennessee and Georgia, obviously. So it's going to be a good one. All that can be found from a Tennessee perspective at VolQuest.com.
And you know where to find it on the Georgia side, DawgsHQ.com. The crew of me, Jake Rowe, Jake Roos, Rusty Mansell, and Jeremy Johnson bringing you 24/7 Georgia coverage, just ready to roll as the Dogs are now up to number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. We saw last year how a number 1 ranking in this game turned out. We'll see how it turns out this year. Eric, really appreciate the time and look forward to seeing you on Saturday.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate it.